Hello class 8 students. Today I am going to discuss the remaining part of the lesson, and also I will bring to light certain answers of the questions. Our lesson is about the revolt of 1857, and in the last class we discussed about the different possibilities that has been formed. Today we will discuss some of the issues in detail. We have discussed in the earlier discussion that there were several causes of the revolt of 1857 which has started in India. Among the causes were religious and economic, and also some regards to military causes were there, some immediate causes were there. So we will discuss these things in elaborate. Here religious cause was that the British were interfering in their religious practices in India. Here, how the British were interfering in religious practice in India? That is, the British started to discuss the system of Christianity religion into their various journals and newspapers, that the Christianity religion is better than any religion in the world. So in this way, through Christian missionaries, they were trying to force the Indians to convert their religion from Hinduism or Islamism. Here some of the religious reforms were also taken by the British. Whenever there are some religious activities which is going against the welfare of the human, so the British thought that better to interfere these things. So this interference bring out some orthodox Indians against the British. Here in religious reform, sati system were abolished, parda system were also abolished. The girls were asked to go to schools, that is, schools were open for the girls. And also through the introduction of Christian missionaries, English medium educations were introduced in India, and through this all the girls and boys were going to the school, need to go to the school as instructed by the British. In this way, the Orthodox Hindus who were thinking of their own religions, they were discontent against the British activities. So these Orthodox Indians were alienated by the religious reform movement in India. The economic reforms were that the British were imposing huge taxes on the agricultural land. The peasants were unable to pay these huge taxes. Also some other taxes like house tax, land tax, revenue taxes like firewood, forestry, community fishings, these were also introduced by the British. Here, to pay the required amount, the peasants were unable to collect the revenues, and also the revenues had to be paid through cash. And this way the British were discontent, the Indian people were discontent against the British. So this was the religious and economic reform, which these were the economic causes that started the immediate cause of that started the revolt of 1857. So the revolt of 1857 did not start it immediately. It was started in due course of time when the Indian people were discontent against the British. In this way, all the section of the people were started and were engaged in the revolt. But first, who were engaged in the revolt? The sepoys, the sipahis, the Indian soldiers who were appointed in the British army started the revolt. There, it can be said that the immediate cause of the revolt of 1857. What is the immediate cause of the revolt in 1857? In 1853, a kind of rifle gun was introduced in the British army, and here both the Indian sepoys and the British soldiers were also engaged in using that rifle. Here that rifle is called as Enfield rifle. Why it is called the rifle? Because the bullets inside the barrel, when it comes out by rotating, and rotation of the bullet will stabilize the path of the bullet, and it will travel faster and longer in a straight path. So it is called as rifle. Enfield means that bullets has to be filled by hand into the barrel of the rifle. Here, in those times, the gunpowder that were used is very vulnerable to moisture. When any moisture comes in contact with the gunpowder, the gunpowder will not work. The gunpowder does not work. It dams up. As it dams up, the gunpowder work. It is very dangerous in warlike situation whenever the gunpowder is there. So, before the Enfield rifle was introduced, a tin flask was given by the British to the soldiers. Inside the tin flask there was gunpowder. A bullet is given in a separate packet, a cloth packet, canvas, made of canvas, and a wick is given. This wick is made of cotton and it is lightened up like incense sticks, agarbatti. So in the Enfield rifle, first the gunpowder through the barrel has to be put out a little amount. Sometimes the amount is more or lesser, and then the bullet has to be filled, and with a long iron stick it has to be put down, fixed into it to make it the mixture tight. Gunpowder, then the bullet, and then pointing towards the enemy, the wick has to be introduced into the stirrup of the rifle. That is, a small hole is behind the rifle, and through that hole the fire is introduced. As the gunpowder explodes, the bullet travels outside of the barrel, hitting the enemy. So here it is quite difficult, and only in a minute an expert soldier can fill and firing 3 bullets, a maximum of 3 bullets in 1 minute. So here the Enfield rifle were introduced, and here in this Enfield rifle, a cartridge was introduced. Inside the cartridge system there is a packet made of paper, hard paper. It is a packet, and inside the packet the bullet and the gunpowder is already present there. Here the packet is quite hard enough. It is so hard, it is very difficult to tear it up. Like when we are eating some candy or pulse chocolate, whatever, we used to bite the candy like this and take it out the candy and put it into our mouth. So in this way they had to bite the cartridge. Though the cartridge is made of paper and also is very vulnerable, the paper absorbs moisture, water, and through the mouth the saliva will go to the gunpowder and the gunpowder will be destroyed. So to save from moisture, grease were applied on the cartridge. This grease will prevent the moisture to come in contact with the gunpowder. So in this way they had to tear up the cartridge, grease cartridge, putting the gunpowder and the bullet which is already inside the cartridge in the bullet, and fire the Enfield rifle. And in this way it has become faster enough that a sepoy, general sepoy, can light it up, can load the Enfield rifle in 1 minute, about more than 6 to 7 bullets. But here the fact is that the grease that the British were using in the cartridge, applying in the cartridge, it was made of fats of animals, and basically the fats of animals was of pig and cows. Here for Christianity, cows and pigs are edible. For them it is common. They used to consume pigs and cows. It is still happening. For in Christianity religion there is no other restriction. But in Hinduism, cow is regarded as sacred, as holy. We used to worship cows. So, and again for pigs, for Muslim, the Muslim used to regard pig as forbidden. It is already mentioned in their holy books, and also in holy books of the Hindus it is already mentioned cows is to be worshipped. So we used to worship cows. So this is not good. This was not good for the both Hindus and Muslims, and the Muslims and Hindus thought that the British were deliberately trying to harm the religious emotions of the Indians. And this way the immediate cause of the revolt of 1857 was this: Mangal Pandey, who was appointed, installed in Barakpur cantonment of Meerut 35th Battalion, he started the revolt. With him Mangal Pandey was Ishwar Pandey. Both were fighting against the British. They went against the British And in this way, the famous Sepoy Mutiny started. So it is called a Sepoy Mutiny, not only a revolt of 1857. So, but as the revolt was started, but the revolt failed, and the British were able to suppress it with iron hand. What was the failure? The revolt of 1857 was not successful in expelling the British from the country because of the following reason. The first reason is that the Sepoys didn't have a good leader. For leading a revolt, a good leader who has a better plan need to be present. So they didn't have a good plan. And the Indian soldiers who helped the revolt, they did not think of any plan for the country after the British were defeated. You see, whenever revolt is got, their agenda, the revolt of 1857, the agenda of the revolt of 1857 and also the rebel leaders were that whenever they won the revolt and the British will be expelled out of the India, then what will happen in the post revolt? They didn't have the revolt, the ruling class didn't have the had any plan for running the country. So this was one of the cause. And in the next part, that some of the rulers, they were afraid of the punishment given by the British. The British were stronger enough, and some of the rulers were not participating in the revolt. Instead, they are helping the British because they were afraid of the British, and they were so afraid of the British that to prevent themselves from the wrath of the British, they did not participate in the mainstream of the revolt, and instead they took the side of the British. And in this way, one part of the ruling class were against the British and another part of the ruling class were with the British. So in this way, definitely the revolt is to be failed. But what happened? What we got after the revolt of 1857? What helped? There were various outcomes of the revolt of 1857. It is because of the revolt of 1857, the revolt were suppressed with iron hand, and the Indian people, they lost a war against the British. But the courage that the Indian people put forth by their own sacrifice, that they could not win. Their courage could not win because the enemy, the British, was having full power, and they had good plan in its every steps. The rebels were dead, an early blow after prolonged and bitter fighting. So in this way, if we see some positive effects, though the revolt was suppressed, the revolt of 1857 shattered the administration of the East India Company. The East India Company were not present after the revolt of 1857. The East India Company completely gone out of India. And after the revolt is suppressed, the British took the authority. That means before the revolt of 1857, the Indian subcontinent were ruled over by the East India Company. East India Company was simply a trading company, business company, not an authoritative company, not an authoritative administration or a government. It was simply a company. But after the revolt of 1857, the East India Company was shattered. The East India Company were not present in India, and they were ousted from the India. And instead, the sole administration of the country were directly taken by the British government. And through the Government of India Act 1858, the British Parliament take the charge of the Indian administration and give it to the British Crown, that is the Queen of England. So here, the Queen of England through her proclamation says that doctrine of lapse will be abandoned. Here, doctrine of lapse, what was doctrine of lapse? That means whenever an Indian ruler dies without a legal hire, then the whole kingdom of that Indian subcontinent will be taken by the British. It will be lapsed. It will gone to the British. So it was, this policy was abandoned, and the remaining ruler whose administration was not taken back by the British, they were free to rule over their own kingdom. And also some reforms movement were taken by the British Parliament for the welfare of the Indian people. So these were the outcomes of the revolt of 1857. That is the result of the revolt of 1857. And this way, though the revolt was suppressed, So I will provide you the answer, long answer type questions into the WhatsApp group. So I hope so you will understand the lesson and you will try to write the answers. And I would like to say, you do share the videos that I am uploading into the YouTube channel. So for the time being, I remain. Thank you.